I'm listening to the Glenn Beck program at the same time. What are the odds? Hello and welcome to the program. So, may I tell you a story that was in a novel by Chris Stewart that we released? It was a series of novels, Wrath and Righteousness. If you didn't read it, you might want to. The novel starts with the Iranians coming off the coast of California and the coast of the eastern seaboard. I don't remember where they were, maybe Florida, and launching a missile into the sky just outside of our water line, and launching a missile and then blowing it up right at the right place for an EMP, which is strangely exactly what they've been doing in all of their tests. They keep launching these missiles and they keep blowing up at exactly the place that you would need it to blow up for an EMP. And the head of the Russian missile test responded to one of the reporters, and one of the reporters said, "It's another failure. It keeps blowing up." And he said, "Failure? Well, that would depend on what you were trying to do, wouldn't it?" Well, yes, Mr. Spooky Military Guy, it would, I guess. So what are you trying to do? Why are these exploding at exactly the same place every time? Some are the hypothesis is that it is because that's exactly the altitude you would need to explode for an EMP. An EMP off the west coast and off the east coast of the United States would shut the United States down. And listen to this staggering number: 75% of our population would die in the first year. Or is it 2 years?
I thought it was 6 months, but it might
it's
be
a staggering number and a staggering short period of time to kill that many people. And you don't have to march an army in. All you have to do is just shut our electricity off. And I mean, fry all of the electronics.
Think about what that would do. You know, it would stop
trains, trucks,
food,
tractors,
food. No
everything.
Food. Your supply would dry up. No drugs. So if you're on some kind of medicine, some kind of life-saving medicine, you're not on that anymore.
Any kind of drugs, anything from insulin to. I mean, think of this one. Nobody thinks of this. Think of the amount of psychiatric drugs this country is on.
Yeah.
And think about the animal rage that is being held at bay by so many drugs. Think of the Lipitors, all the way from just the heart medication, blood pressure medication, the pacemakers, everything that all of a sudden is just no longer works. How many people die just because the pharmaceuticals dry up, let alone the food, the water supply, heat, air conditioning, you name it, and then the disease. So I tell you that because
the panic and the ensuing rioting and
bad. It's the worst case scenario. It becomes the zombie apocalypse, this is the premise in Wrath and Righteousness. And Chris Stewart lays it all out in his book. And this was a series that we released 3 years ago. And you can still buy it online, Wrath and Righteousness, and it's I think a 5-book series. And I do believe that this was inspired writing. I read it probably, 5-6 years ago, and I bought the series from Chris, and I just think it is the most incredible story that Americans should read. It should be a TV show. It's almost like the beginning of Revolution in a way. That movie, it shows you how you get there and what happens. And so the reason why I bring it up today is because I don't know if anybody saw, the Iranians are sending a destroyer. Is it a destroyer and a fleet of ships around the destroyer to our coastline? You see that?
Yeah.
Over the weekend,
near our maritime borders, I guess.
Yeah. Which is, where, Chris's book, that's where they are. And they're right at our water line, our maritime borders. And they're sending a destroyer over. And they're saying they're just doing it to posture and say, we're not afraid of you. Now, think of that. Forget about the EMP thing. I mean, I really think you should read Wrath and Righteousness. It's a great book. It's a great series. It's really, you won't be able to put this thing down. Pat and I talked about it. In fact, everybody on the staff read it when we first published it, and I forced everybody to read it. And everybody said the same thing. I don't know the difference between fact and fiction anymore because of what's happening. It is so closely mirroring everything that's going on in the Middle East, especially. I don't know what's fact and fiction. But not only is it worth thinking about how easy it would be for the Iranians to hit us with an EMP and completely change the course of the world and humanity for at least a century, it's worth just considering how weak we have become that the Iranians can send over a destroyer to our the Iranians. We're not talking about the Soviet Union and Cuba. We're talking about the Iranians. Now, this is the same Iranian group of thugs that our president says we can negotiate with, that we actually won in the negotiation, that they're on the right road now. Did you see that they said over the weekend that the Jews and Israelis, I think, need to be vaporized, I think was their word, and that the great Satan will be stopped as well? That's what they're saying. We're claiming, our president is claiming that, we're on the road to really great things with the Iranians. And look at what they're doing.
Yeah, and did you see the state-run simulation they ran on TV?
No, I didn't see this. I read about it on TheBlaze, but I didn't even read about it. I saw the headline on TheBlaze.
It's cheesy. It's ridiculous, but it shows their intent. They show these drones flying over Israel and just wiping the cities out and targets out, and they're facing absolutely no defense from the Israelis whatsoever. Then they show them attacking the USS Lincoln in the Gulf and just wreaking destruction on the U.S. and Israeli targets. And
now, is this just like a Hollywood movie that they're doing?
No, it's a simulation of what they're going to do to us if we even threaten them.
So this is done by their government to show us what we're going to do.
Yeah.
What they're going to do.
Yeah, show us what we're in for if we continue to backsass them. So, I mean, it's
we're winning.
Silly, but
we're winning.
Yeah.
We're winning.
Yeah.
Let me go to Steve in